Judy, who was 32 years old, and I were married for 2 years. I am 37 years old. After one specific phone call that changed everything, our relationship worsened. It all started while watching football match highlights in the living room. The ringing of Judy's phone interrupted the game commentary. The constant interruptions were getting on her nerves. I gave her the phone in the kitchen and told her to answer the call. Judy, who usually maintains a rigid separation between work and personal life, appeared prepared to get her wrath out on whoever answered the phone when it rang again. We both worked in business, and Judy strongly felt that our work and personal lives should remain separate. It was her way of reminding us of our social responsibility as people. She finally disclosed the cause for the call during dinner. They are moving us out of state, after a bit of silence. She remarked, I was surprised and wondered why and where the transfer would happen. Judy clarified that the company was growing and that the board intended to move staff members to the new branch to oversee its progress. I knew how transfers usually operated and that external commitments were not usually a part of them. Judy should not have been granted such a transfer unless she had made an application, as she is a married lady. When I asked her about it, she said she hadn't applied and had even initially turned down the offer. However, she finally acknowledged that the move came with a promotion. It turned out that Judy, whom I respected for her drive, had spent the last year putting in much effort to advance. She had made additional effort, volunteered, and made sure her 7-person team worked well together. She had been working hard for this promotion, but it came with an unforeseen cost, a job relocation that would completely change our lives. Judy's pay doubled, and she got a lot of extra bonuses and perks. Even though she had made money, I knew that her real goal was to go up the corporate ladder, so when it came time to decide whether to accept the job transfer, that drove her. Judy turned to me for advice, and although I was conflicted, I didn't want to hold her back, so I chose to be supportive and tell her that I would stand by her decision. Little did I know that this choice would lead to unforeseen challenges in my mind. People with long-distance marriages successfully maintain their relationships despite distance, but I hadn't seen it firsthand. Judy's eyes lit up with excitement, and I convinced myself we could make it work. I thought back to friends who had traveled for work and spent extended periods apart from their families, and they had strong marriages. However, looking back, I wondered if I had a voice. Judy thanked me often throughout the evening for my understanding, but I felt a wave of annoyance wash over me. She gently manipulated the situation to get me to choose that would benefit her. She had set me up, and while I was irritated, her enthusiasm made me feel less hostile after she left. After finalizing the arrangements, we talked about how to keep the marriage afloat. Judy receiving 5 days off every month and making calls daily looked like sensible options. I trusted Judy's goal-oriented demeanor and didn't consider the possibility of adultery until she boarded the plane. As the distance between Judy and me increased, our phone chats grew closer, and I found myself learning more about her life than when we had lived together originally. I had no idea that our marriage had all but died. I had made the proper decision by putting her aspirations ahead of my immediate demands. At least until Judy called one morning 2 months ago to postpone her flight back to Michigan, we were doing OK. Due to her company's poor quarterly performance, she had to concentrate on finding qualified candidates for administrative positions. I got it and didn't mind because I was about to close a big deal that would give me more freedom at work. I got $1 million in return for this contract, which allowed me to spend as much time as I wanted with Judy. I wanted to surprise her once the agreement was finalized, so I kept it a secret. I needed to be completely focused and at my best to accomplish this. We texted back and forth on WhatsApp, but only spoke on the phone for a while. I had not had a meaningful chat in a long time, but was preoccupied with closing the deal. A mutual friend accused me a few days ago of being manipulative and heartless. I no longer regard myself that way now that I know what transpired. I feel more like a victim than anything. I'm telling you the tale to clarify how Judy and I interacted while the sale was finalized. I experienced the thrill of a significant discovery. I was almost ready to join the Elite 10 in America that night. While I waited for confirmation, I scrolled through my phone and wanted to call Judy. It took all of my willpower not to. I tried to tell her about the past week's events and how our lives were about to change. Instead of calling Judy immediately to tell her about our planned trip to Paris, I surprised her with all the details. I had carefully planned everything. The tickets, the hotel, the activities, everything. Revealing the information and seeing her joy, though, I found a photograph that broke my heart as I was scrolling through her WhatsApp tail. Judy was holding Henry, a tall man with olive skin, brown hair, and blue eyes who looked no younger than 35. Judy had recruited Henry as her first employee when she first started working, and she needed his experience. The image's caption says, "Dark times reveal angels are sinking." I was overcome with a feeling, and I should have known something wasn't right. Even though I wanted to tell her immediately that the deal went through, I didn't. Instead, I hurriedly reserved the next trip to California to see her. My suspicions were confirmed when I arrived. Judy and Henry were involved in an affair. Determined to confront her, I pretended to be a surprise visitor and called her Michigan-based employer to find out where she was. Luckily, the person answering the phone was a familiar friend, and I talked her out of telling Judy that I had arrived during the journey. I mentally ran through several possible outcomes, wondering how Judy would respond when I told her about the arrangement. I went straight from the airport to her branch, intending to take her out to dinner and gently break the news to her. However, I was told that Judy hadn't shown up for work that day, so I had to take an Uber to my given address. I was also concerned when the receptionist revealed that Judy was married, so I didn't press the issue further out of respect for her desire to keep her private life private after climbing 4 flights of stairs. Just before I was going to knock, I stood in front of Judy's apartment door, hiding a bunch of flowers behind my back. My wife was moaning and saying things like, "Keep going." It dawned on me like a ton of bricks. She had ample time to cheat on me after 5.5 months apart. I almost lost my cool, but I controlled myself. After leaving her flat, I drove back to her office, telling the receptionist not to tell anyone about my visit. I even gave her a reasonable $100 tip. I decided not to allow myself to be played any longer, so I drafted divorce papers and waited for Judy to return home with Henry. As the groans indicated, it seemed all they did was engage in intimate acts. I checked into a hotel near Judy's apartment to keep a close eye on her over the next week. She remained unaware as her routine included work yoga and her apartment. It became apparent that she spent significant time with Henry, making it painful. As soon as I picked up the lock and reached her door, I heard grunts and groans. I crept in slowly while recording the scene on my phone. Despite the discomfort, I captured a full minute of them together before revealing my presence. As Judy scrambled for clothes, I felt a strange sense of power. The experience was heart-wrenching, but the pain in her face when I told her I would share the video with her coworkers and family if she didn't sign the divorce papers made it somewhat gratifying. She pleaded for forgiveness, promising to resign and seek therapy. But I was repulsed by her every image of Henry with her made me sick, and I refused to entertain her pleas for forgiveness. I served her the divorce papers as soon as I could after receiving the signed divorce papers from Judy. She claimed to have resigned from her job. However, that didn't deter me from taking a drastic step, sending the video of her infidelity to her parents. I wanted them to witness the actions of the child they raised. The pain and betrayal I felt pushed me to expose the truth to those closest to her. It was a decision fueled by a mix of hurt anger and a desire to ensure the consequences of her actions extended beyond our relationship. A few weeks after my return from the Dominican Republic, Judy showed up at my door, pleading for forgiveness and to be taken back. It was funny to watch her in such a vulnerable state. The video became a way for me to make her face the consequences of her choices, not just within our marriage, but in the eyes of her family as well. The aftermath of exposing Judy's infidelity had some satisfaction in watching her relationship with her parents crumble. But beyond that, It seemed like I hadn't achieved much. Her eyes were huge and swollen, suggesting that she had either been crying a lot or maybe using drugs. Her emotional state didn't change my opinion, though. I knew there wasn't much I could do to help her because she was already so upset. After Henry let her into the house, attention turned to the man she had cheated on me with. She suggested that I was thinking twice about getting a divorce. She started to justify her conduct, saying she never imagined I would follow through. She talked about feeling punished sufficiently for her mistakes and losing her parents' respect. I posed a straightforward query to gauge her sincerity. How often did it occur? Her response, in which she swore she was speaking the truth, betrayed a lack of regret, as she said that managing a failing company was difficult and didn't want to burden me further by discussing her issues. Her justifications astounded me, especially in light of how easily she had lied before me, which reminded me of my father's conviction that it was almost impossible to lie when looking someone in the eye. I felt deceived and couldn't believe there might have been no truth in our relationship. Though initially skeptical, my observations during the first 2 weeks in Michigan and the day I arrived dispelled any illusions about Judy's honesty. As for Henry, I had no information on him, learning that he was married, which infuriated me, but I remained composed. I saw an opportunity to extend my revenge, not only to hurt Judy, but also to hold Henry accountable for his actions. Henry could not escape the consequences of his betrayal despite my acting abilities, which were nowhere near Oscar-worthy. Judy appeared excited to tell me anything and anything, even falsehoods regarding Henry's purported manipulation of her. Weaving her out and requesting some time, I was sure she had no idea I was baiting her. I forwarded the damning footage to all those acquainted with her, even her coworker, who was an office receptionist. My first move was to purchase a ticket to Michigan to exploit Judy's knowledge regarding Henry's marriage to destroy his life. But my strategy wasn't traditional. I wanted to hit him right in the most painful place. I rented a studio near Henry's house and watched him from a distance, waiting for the appropriate opportunity to sneak in footage of his extramarital encounters around the office. I will watch his life fall apart and see how his wife responds. The wife of Amy Henry was stunning, with long, luscious blonde hair, storm gray eyes, and a beguiling smile. Despite my ulterior intentions, I found myself changing my mind, even though my original plan was to trick her into having an affair so I could brag to her husband. I thought Amy was a friendly and compassionate person. Our interactions evolved from roadside hellos to coffee dates arranged via chance collisions. I discovered a great deal about her throughout that process, and for a few days, I even forgot about the original revenge scheme that had sent me to Michigan. I began to see less of Henry for a while, and our relationship appeared easy to preserve. Though it seemed that my strategy had failed, I later learned that Henry had been dismissed and was actively looking for a new job while attempting to avoid raising any red flags with Amy during one of our conversations. Sincerity demanded that Amy disclose that Henry was an immigrant who entered the country on a student visa. She also talked candidly about her marital problems, describing how her spouse had cut off contact with her until roughly 2 months ago when their circumstances unexpectedly changed, and she was unaware of it. Amy's statement made it apparent that she and Henry hadn't been married for up to 3 years, indicating that he wasn't a citizen, even though he had sought a green card. Unknowingly, Amy had given me enough information to ruin Henry. I recognized a chance to use this knowledge. I told Amy everything because I needed her to turn against her husband. At first, Amy was naturally upset with me for lying, but she gradually got over it. I played the video for her and described how their acts haunted my dreams. Thankfully, Amy was easily persuaded. We spent the next hour organizing her confrontation with Henry without my presence to watch the scene. I made sure he understood that everything horrible that was happening to him was my fault. Henry was reportedly in danger of being deported back to his own country when I last heard. I can say now that I'm satisfied with myself.